everyone. Today I'll be talking about how to don and doff your personal protective equipment, as well as how to do a respiratory swab for this COVID-19 testing. I want to thank everyone out there who's volunteering their time and efforts to help to get these folks screened, and definitely want to make sure that we are being mindful of being able to be safe while we're doing it. So to start off, and one thing to really consider is that we don't need to really think about sterile procedure when we're putting on the equipment like we would in the OR or something like that. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to protect ourselves, right? So if we're thinking about just trying to test and not actually protecting ourselves, then a patient or a person could come as we're doing the testing, cough all over us, and then it gets on our clothes, it gets in on our face and our eyes, and that's not what we want. So that's why we're wearing the PPE, which is the personal protective equipment, so that we can make sure we're protecting ourselves and we have a way of taking all that off prior to going home and things of that nature. So to start, ungloved hands. You want to go ahead and grab your gown, okay, placing it on with the part that's covering the body, of course, being in front. And depending on the gown you have, some of them you're going to have it already be able to not have a tie, have a requirement to tie in the back. But if it does, then you definitely want to try and tie it in the back around the neck. This helps to keep it safe and secure to cover everything so it's not falling over. And then you'll also have a tie around the waist. Some of the gowns have ties in the back for the waist, some have them in the front that you would tie around to the waist. And you're just doing very generic little bows, if you will. So if you have any kids and you're teaching them how to tie their shoes, you know it's 2 bunny ears, and then you're going to loop them and swoop them. But either way it goes, however you want to do your bows is all up to you. We just want to make sure we have a good, secure coverage and tight fit so that when we're leaning over or anything like that, we're not potentially exposing ourselves as well. The next thing we want to do is get our mask. So there will be N95 masks. If you have the ability to bring some of your own PPE, especially when it comes to masks and gowns, be very helpful. And if you've been fit tested, then an N95 is the way you want to go. If you haven't been fit tested ever, then we're probably going to just use surgical masks because that's where, because that's been, the regulations have been lessened, if you will, to know that we can at least use those. But if you have an N95 mask, you've been fit tested, and you know how to actually put it on, then that's what you can use. But for this type, if you will, you're going to go ahead and open it up so that it exposes the area that your mouth will go in. And at this point, we're just putting it on. There's no real issue with handling it or anything like that. We just want to get it on. So to start off, we want to go ahead and put it underneath. The bottom piece has no protective or no, adhesive area that's going to help to feel better around your nose. So the bottom is very much a blank area. And so you're going to use that to put it underneath your chin and make it guide up over your nose. As you're doing that, you're going to take the bottom, pull, and allow that to go over your head to the back of your neck. I know I'm getting a little muffled, but hopefully you can still hear me. And then the top one is going to go ahead and come up at the base of the crown of your head. So if you're looking, it's coming not on the top and not too far down, but right at the ending of the crown of your head. And you want to adjust to fit, to make it feel comfortable, but then you're going to take 2 fingers to the side of your nose and squeeze in that little area, okay? Now, making sure that you've got a good fit when you're out in the field, one way to test for that is to take your hands, place it over the mask, and inhale as sharply as you can. And what you should have is that the mask caves in on your face. You're not pushing it in, you're allowing the sucking in of the air to come into your face. And that lets you know that you have, at the very least, a pretty good fit, a pretty good seal, even if it's not as good as it would be, say, if we were actually doing the testing itself. The next thing, again, still ungloved hand, are going to be your face shield or goggles. So if you have goggles, you're just going to either put them on with the strap or put them on as such. And if you have a face shield, the face shield will come around and it'll be on your forehead coming down. And it's there's another little tie that would come to the back of your head. But goggles work as well. And another test for that to know whether or not you have a good seal is whether or not you can see some sort of condensation occurring on your goggles or on your face shield, okay? So if that occurs, then you want to readjust, right? So I can see that I have a little bit, so I'm readjusting my mask to make sure I get a good seal in there. And it looks to be that I have a good seal at this point. The last thing you're going to do is put on your gloves. Now, at this point, everything else that we've touched, and we've not been exposed to the elements, if you will, we're good. So we just put on our gloves and that's fine. It's done in this order because when we finish and we're taking everything off, we don't have to worry about touching these items up here with our bare hands because we've done it with our bare hands to put it on. Now you see me, I have my full PPE on that's going to protect me from those things that may be coming if a person coughs or sneezes in my face. So now we have our PPE on and we know how to put that on. Now we need to know how to take it off. So remember, our gloves were the last things we put on, so we want to make sure they're the first things we take off and with our other potentially soiled garments, okay? So we're going to start at the middle, pulling on our PPE so that it snaps and breaks. And then also, because we tied this area up here, we want to make sure we get that to snap and break as well. Now it broke, but we're going to keep on pulling so that we can remove our arms out with the PPE, but trying as best we can to make sure that the gown comes off in front of us and not exposing us to whatever is underneath the gown. So as you see, the gown currently holds my glove, and I now have a free hand to then come in here underneath my hand and my glove so that the glove comes off on the opposite side. Making sure you fold that gown without touching the other side of the gown. Once you've done all that, you can discard this into the biohazard waste receptacle that is available to you. Next, now that your hands are free and you had your gloved hands out of the gloves, you can go ahead and remove your glasses and goggles, as well as coming behind your neck and taking off the bands without touching the mask so that you never actually touch the outside of the mask. You're only touching the bands that have been behind your head. Once you've done all that, you can release and go wash your hands, remembering to scrub very thoroughly with every part of your hands, including your wrists and the back of your hands and in between your fingers as well as your fingernails. You want to sing happy birthday twice or ABCs at a normal rate, not speeding through it like some do, underwater with warm soap and water as best you can. If you don't have access to soap and water at that time, by all means use a hand sanitizer, but make sure you cover all of those areas as well. And then don't touch anything until it dries. All right, so how to do the actual swab. A link will come with this video as well to help you to see how an actual swab is done, but just a few pointers to think about. So one, this is the swab. If you meet resistance when you're going in parallel to the soft palate as the patient has their head tilted back, there may be some sort of swollen turbinate going on, and you might want to try the other nostril just because we need to be able to get this back as far as possible. And generally it's going to be about half of this actual swab itself that's going into the patient's nose. It's not comfortable. The patients are not going to like it. They're going to try and lean back away from you because they don't want that going in their nose. But this is what we have to do in order to get a good sample. So just keep that in mind, and knowing that you may have to either use your hand to keep them from moving their head back, or having them use the headrest of their car seat to be able to reduce their ability to go back any further. Knowing that we're testing in the car, this also presents an interesting little dynamic because we're not facing them in front of them directly. So you're going to have them kind of turn their head to the side slightly, lean their head back, and rest it against the headrest if you really want to get a good angle to be able to know how to get that swab in there. But once you get that, you're going to go in parallel to the soft palate, and go back as far as you can. Again, you're going to go in about half of the way with the swab that you have. Once you get in there, you're going to let it touch to the back of the touch the back of the nasopharynx, twisting it about 3 good times before removing it. And then with that, you have now your sample. Now, one of the things that I didn't mention was the actual media that you're going to put the swab in. So with that, you want to make sure before you start the swab that you've loosened the cap on the specimen tube, okay? That's going to help you for when you're placing the swab back in your specimen tube so that you can easily take it off, put the swab in, break it off in the tube. You're just going to lean it across the top of the tube and it'll break easily, and then place the cap back on. Once you've done that, you have your specimen and it's ready to go into the biohazard bag for send off to the lab.